Yo, it's an interesting contrast making something that looks completely opposite visually than what you're hearing sonically work together and work well. But I think I figured it out through trial and error. But I think it works. Y'all let me know. What's up with it, y'all? My name is Trevor Went. I'm an experiential artist based in Chocolate City, Washington, D.C., and I make art to challenge perspectives and give hope to the marginalized and oppressed. And we are in episode 3 of my creative breakdown of my latest series, Niggas in Nature. Look, there are plenty of spaces and videos and channels and stuff like that on YouTube that talk about the tech, talk about the technical skills, how to do this, that, and the third with this lens, how to light this, that, and the third. But where can we talk about creative inspiration? And so I want to fill the gap and help y'all to tell better stories, to make better art, to make bodies of work, because I really care about bodies of work. So let's chop it up, y'all. We talking about sound and color. How did I use and create the sound and color scapes of Niggas in Nature to tell that story? So yeah, when it comes to nature as my visual backdrop, why did I choose that? Well, nature came naturally, no pun intended, to me because I was already on this trip to make this sort of imagery. This stuff, as I kind of discussed in the previous episode, grew out of a 30th birthday trip that solo trip through Utah that I was already taking. And then I didn't really know what was going to come of it. And so what that then brought along in the process was, just letting that thing breathe. And the soundscape came after the fact. And so then this idea sprung up from this film from Jansen Powers called Built From Within, which I talked about on the last episode, where there was this immersive sound that sat within the same world of what you were seeing visually, while this Ansel Adams interview played with this sort of old school feel to it, which was really dope. But what I ended up doing was very much so the opposite of that. I wanted to contrast sonically to what I was seeing and bring a whole nother world in, which I think is just extremely challenging because you're trying to play out two different worlds at the same time and make those things work together and not feel disconnected. It's one of those things where it's like you see it and you like, oh yeah, that's easy, I could do that. And then you try to do it and you're like, yo, this is not easy. It's one of those spaces of mastery, if you will, where it's like it looks so much easier than it actually is. So that's how that joint played out, which was a challenge, but I think it really did come together by the end of it. And so with that, and the reason that I think that it works is because it resulted in producing layers for the viewer. So you have like the layers of what you can see visually, right? And then you have the layers of what you can hear, like, especially for us niggas, like here looking at that stuff and seeing one thing, but then hearing these sounds that sound so familiar, hearing these spaces and these scenes that you can picture in your own communities, what those spaces might show up as, because it's not like it's pinpointed that it must be a specific place in our communities, right? It's kind of a broader scope of what it could be in those spaces, and it could exist as, but there's so much familiarity that comes up within that. All you kind of know is that there's sounds of a city that are in this because of the level of activity in comparison to what might be a porch in the suburbs or a porch in the country. So those are things that I had to kind of play out and wanted to kind of incorporate and wanted to bring into this space. And then somehow in creating this sort of contrasting space to build harmony, to build a connectedness that worked, and bring those two worlds together to create one cohesive world that really worked, and then give kind of Easter eggs and ear candy to then come back to, and layers to come back to build some longevity. And that's one thing I think that is really important that I've learned over the years with really creating lasting bodies of work, is to make layers, is to create spaces and and soundscapes and visual ideas that someone can keep coming back to and keep finding new things from. That creates longevity of a body of work to me. And it was really important for me to create these two worlds though, because for me, I exist in both of these worlds. You know, I've experienced these national parks, but I also exist in these spots where it's chopping up with the homie, whether it's the neighborhood, with my family, you know, on the corner in the city, or in, you know, a food place in the city or whatever, or, you know, on the porch or whatever in the country. Like, I experience all these different spaces where these conversations happen. These are my life. These are my experiences. And I imagine for my niggas, like, that's our experience too, right? It's also the tension of, you know, the beginning of that. It's like, nigga, ain't you almost get eaten by a bear once? Like, you don't understand the amount of anxieties that existed in my family when I was going on this trip. Even though I'd already done a bigger trip, you know, 30 days on a road for the Westward Summer for after I graduated from college. And I guess it was different because in that trip I had somebody with me. With this one, it was solo. And I had to quell those anxieties of, like, my family. My mom begged me not to go. She was really tripping off of it, but I had to do what I needed to do and experience what I needed to experience. And that was what I kept communicating. It was like, I need this trip. I need y'all to chill because I need this trip right now. You don't understand how much I need this. But when you have to hold those things in tension, and why there's so much anxiety, why there's so much fear, why there's so much hesitation, that issue is going to make you think. And so those are things that I had to consider and bring into these conversations. And that's why you hear that sort of nuance and hear those sort of tensions that are built into how I made this, because there were so many other pieces of, the tensions and realities of what we experience as Black folks and what our vantage points might be when it comes to talking about this stuff. So yeah, when we talk about the symbolism of this stuff, of creating this sort of contrast, it's like, if you think about outside and what the great outdoors, what these sort of like big mountainscapes and things like that, these spaces mean to folks, think about how for many people it embodies freedom. It embodies expanding perspectives of the world. It feels like, I guess, humbling. This world is so much bigger than me, but not in a negative and degrading space, but in a humbling type of space. There is such a freedom to move and perspective that comes from this sort of grandiosity. And think about how many times you see photos of homegirls who have these photos where, you know, they're either flashing towards the outdoors or they've taken off a top and you just see their bare back of them in the outdoors. And in large part, I think that you see those sorts of visuals because there is that sort of freedom. It's an expression of freedom. It's an expression of that freedom to be closer to your fully natural state, right? And then hold in tension this reality of how much has been done to keep Black folks, keep us niggas from experiencing these sorts of spaces, experiencing freedom like that. From our inception I guess not inception, but from the beginning of our time in this country, we have experienced active oppression and active resistance towards our freedom and towards our expression of a full and substantive life. And so for us to go then experiencing these spaces and then to hear this sort of contrast of like why we have this tension here and how we can kind of reclaim those things, it draws us towards liberation, because reclaiming our right to experience nature, to experience life in this way is liberation. Because reality is, nature ain't new to us, cuz. Nature has always been a part of us historically. You go back to Africa, nature all around. Like this isn't something that is foreign to us. This isn't white people shit. This isn't anything like that. This is us breaking the bonds of generational trauma that have kept us from experiencing these spaces in life to the full, and expanding that scope into what does it look like if you want to show up in nature like this. Now, you can show up in nature in the ways that is normative to us, the cookouts, the family reunions, the state parks, whatever, playing basketball at the park, doing whatever, fishing at the pier. Those are all aspects of experiencing the outdoors. It doesn't have to look like national parks, but to expand the opportunity that we can experience national parks, that we can experience these spaces if we want to, that we can be niggas in nature. That was crucial for me in creating this project. So that's it, y'all. That is episode 3, Sound and Color of my creative breakdown of niggas in nature. We're going to talk about on episode 4, the visual language of niggas in nature, how I built that out, and why visual language is so important to your bodies of work. I'll catch y'all on the flip. Be easy, be safe. Peace.